Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and yes, I am the most unbiased voice you will hear today, or most unbiased face, depending on what platform you are watching or listening, whether it's podcast or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever you're listening. We got a lot to talk about today. A lot's happened in sports this week in college basketball, college football, in the NBA. Speaking of basketball, which I'm going to lead off the show with, the NFL obviously got Cowboys Saints tonight, which is a huge game. You got the whole Baker Mayfield story, which is continuing to develop, and as well as Russell Wilson. Seattle lost to Washington Monday night. We all saw the game. It was a wild finish. It was a relatively boring game for most of the night. Then the last minute and a half, it just the fit hit the shan, kind of. I mean, it was crazy. So I'll talk about why. I got three reasons that Russell Wilson needs to leave Seattle. So there's lots to talk about the show today, but I'm going to start with the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. My Golden State Warriors. I got Andre Iguodala book back there. I got a Warriors hat. I got plenty of other Warriors gear. I've worn jerseys on the show. I'm a Warriors fan, ride or die, man. Ride or die. And so Tuesday night, here was my main takeaway. Those are the two best teams in basketball, and it's not even close. Brooklyn, yeah, I mean, they're talented. Kevin Durant, some think, is the best player in the world. James Harden's got his act back together. Like, he's playing really well. He played great against the Knicks on Tuesday night. But they're not particularly deep, which we thought they'd be. I don't think they're that well coached. I mean, come on, Steve Nash lost to Mike Budenholzer in a playoff series. Come on, man. Like, we bash Mike Budenholzer all postseason long for his adjustments or lack thereof. Right? So I worry about Brooklyn's coaching. I worry about their depth. And frankly, I think they're still discombobulated with the whole Kyrie incident. Plus, what's their notable win? Is it Tuesday? The Knicks are a really good team. They're a playoff team. Heck, if they get the right matchup, they might win a series. But if that's Brooklyn's signature win, then they got a ways to go. Now, it is still November, but I'm talking about right now. Golden State, Phoenix, best two teams in basketball. I like Utah. Utah's going to win a playoff series. They are. Donovan Mitchell, love the kid. Been a fan of his since his rookie year. Okay, but Mike Conley, have nothing but respect for him, but he's getting up there in age. Rudy Gobert, the bench, Jordan Clarkson's very good, but gives you nothing on the defensive end of the floor. And I don't trust Quinn Snyder in the playoffs. I mean, he has blown a 3-1 lead in his playoff coaching career. And last year, he was part of the Jazz blowing a 2-0 lead to the Clippers. The Lakers, relax about the Lakers, okay? Put them out of the way. Okay, Russell's playing better, but AD does not want to play on the low block. I've been talking to Lakers fans about this all week, and they're incensed. Like, dude, you're 6'10", 6'11" in shoes. Get on the block. You're big. You have the capabilities, physical capabilities to be a great physical player. But he doesn't. He shoots under 20% from three. Yeah, he keeps jacking them up, right? Russell Westbrook's playing well, but I don't trust him. And now LeBron is out again, this time with COVID, which, of course, we wish the very best to LeBron and anybody out there who has COVID. Please take this thing seriously. But LeBron's had abdominal issues, and he's been suspended. And I think he had what was the other injury he had earlier on? I think it was like a lower extremity, something like that. And then now he's out with COVID. And this is what I worried about with the Lakers. I said LeBron was the only thing I like about the Lakers. Well, he hasn't been there in the key situations thus far, a month and a half into the season. And I darn sure don't trust Westbrook in the playoffs. The Clippers, Paul George is quietly having a very good season. Paul George won me over the way he played last year in the playoffs. I was part of the pandemic P crowd, but man, lights out last year in the playoffs, specifically, really, once Kawhi Leonard went down. And Clippers fans, all 14 of them, may say, well, Kawhi's going to be back. First of all, I don't know that for a fact because we know Kawhi is a different cat. And even if he does come back from this ACL injury, it'll be less than a year removed from the actual injury when it was sustained. And two, Kawhi's got to get into game shape. I mean, Klay Thompson's coming back for the Warriors in a couple weeks. They're going to play him like 18 to 22 minutes a night. They are going to have him on a minutes restriction, and as they should, right? Coming off not one but two major injuries, going to ease him back into it. Well, the Clippers really won't have that much time to do that with Kawhi, because by the time he comes back, if he does, we'll be in the playoffs. Out east, Chicago, like him a lot. They may make the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, Lonzo is having an excellent season. Zach LaVine's doing his thing. DeMar DeRozan is going to be an all-star this year, right? Once they get healthy, they've had some COVID issues as of late, but, Nikola Vucevic is one of the better big men in the league. Like, Chicago's a really good basketball team. But when you look at East, Philadelphia or Milwaukee, none of the teams I just mentioned are in the same galaxy as the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. By the way, I did say before the season, these will be the two teams that will meet in the Western Conference Finals, and I had Golden State, my Warriors, winning in 7 games. But I think there's two key takeaways, one from either team. One for the losing team, the Warriors. Obviously, Klay Thompson's out, James Wiseman's out, but that's been the case all season, right? Like, we can't use excuse like, oh, well, they were missing those two, and that's why they lost. Well, they were 18-2 without him. Now they're 18-3, nothing to worry about. Tied for the best record in basketball, right? But I think the positive for the Warriors, and this is what I took away as a Warriors fan, like, dang, Mikal Bridges was all over Steph all night, played fantastic. Steph had the worst shooting night of his career when taking over 20 shots, 4 for 21 from the field, 3 for 14 from three, scored a grand total of 12 points. 12. Like, Steph was bad. And Steph couldn't buy a shot Tuesday night in Phoenix. And what you could say for the Warriors is, Steph, our best player, the best player in the world, was terrible. And we were in the game with 2 minutes left. They still had a shot to win. Just came up short. Couldn't make shots. And couldn't get stops when they absolutely had to, right? And then, Golden State's like, hey, Steph's not going to play that bad. Matter of fact, historically, when you look at Steph's career, anytime he has a bad shooting night, he's really inefficient, he almost always comes back the very next game and plays big. I remember, I'll give an example. 5 years, I can't believe it's been this long ago. 5 years ago, the Warriors played the Lakers on a Friday night in LA early in the season. Steph had, I don't remember what the number was, the longest streak of games where he made at least 1 3. Well, that streak ended that night in Los Angeles against a bad Lakers team, and he went like 0 for 10 from 3. So he was bad. I mean, he was horrible. The very next game, he broke the record for most threes made in a game at the time with 13 against the Pelicans. My man Barry Grant Jr. is chiming in the comments here. He says, Suns are the Jazz from last year. Keep believing them if you want. I know better. I know who Black Cat Paul is, and he will show. The beauty of basketball, it reveals all. Well, it does reveal all, but I would remind you, Barry, when you look at this Phoenix team, Chris Paul, he didn't look old. Monty Williams, I don't know, do you forget how to coach? Devin Booker is getting better and better and better. Mikal Bridges. Again, the defensive job he done Steph was unbelievable. He did. Now, some of that was Steph. Steph got some looks. He just missed them, right? But Mikal Bridges made it tough on him. DeAndre Ayton, Golden State, because of their lack of size right now, they couldn't stop him. Could not stop DeAndre Ayton down low. I know Charles Barkley pointed that out during the game. Like, man, Ayton should go off. And really, he did. I mean, he played well. He had 24 points, 11 rebounds, double-double, 11 for 19 for the field. Ayton was good. He was really good. And so the other takeaway for Phoenix is, yes, the opponent's best player shot poorly, but we had something to do with that. And one could argue our best player got hurt in the second quarter, hamstring issue. He's going to be out for a few games. Actually, he's going to be out for when these two teams play again tomorrow night in the Bay Area. And we still hung on to win. I mean, this team's won 17 straight games, which is absurd. They're going to play the Pistons tonight. They'll crush Detroit at home. They'll extend that streak to a franchise record 18. And then it's set up for a rematch tomorrow night at the Chase Center. Golden State and the Suns. And what brings me great joy in that is not only that the Suns and the Warriors are on national TV for the whole NBA world to see, but it got to replace two non-title contending teams that both play in the soon-to-be-called Crypto.com Arena. That's the dumbest name for arena, man. Come on, that's Staples Center. I hate the Lakers, and that's Staples Center. Barry says, by the way, Braun is back tomorrow. Is he? I gotta check. Barry might have just broke some news. Let's see. We got yes. You are in fact correct. Thank you. All right, Barry, shout out to him. He just broke the news. And I just looked here from Shams Charania. Let's see if we can get the let me get the breaking news graphic up here. There we go. So according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, he says, quote, Lakers star LeBron James has been cleared from health and safety protocols to return on Friday versus the Clippers after testing positive, but since registering multiple negative COVID-19 tests. So LeBron did test positive, for those of you that don't know, the other day. And the initial reports were he was going to be out up to 10 days, which I was like, man, Lakers finally get him back and they lose him again. Well, he's going to be back tomorrow night against the Clippers. So that's good to hear. Hey, listen, LeBron draws a big number. LeBron, Steph, Giannis, KD, right, the faces of the league, they draw big ratings. And so good for the Lakers. That's huge for them. And good for LeBron. I know he had put out that, kind of cryptic tweet on Twitter about 24 hours ago saying like, hey, this is fishy. It was kind of weird tweet. You're like, what's fishy? But hey, he's back. Good for the Lakers, and said he's been tested rigorously. According to Woj, he's been tested rigorously since returning to LA from Sacramento. He's had 8 COVID tests since Saturday, all of which have come back negative. So the test in Sacramento was a false positive, and James will return to the court Friday, tomorrow night, against the Los Angeles Clippers. So, all right, there you go. So we got a little bit of news here, a little bit of breaking news. So LeBron is back tomorrow night for the Lakers. Unfortunately, Laker Nation and all of 14, might be 13, might be 15, more or less, Clippers fans, that game's on ESPN anymore. They got the 2 best teams in the league on TV Friday night in the Bay Area. It's gonna be a good one. I'm gonna take the Warriors to win. I kind of had an idea that this might be a split. I think Golden State's gonna win tomorrow night, reclaim the number 1 seed in the West, best record in basketball. But these 2 teams are going to match up in mid to late May. Okay, you can book it. Both teams are healthy. These 2 are going to match up in mid to late May for a chance to go to the 2022 NBA Finals. Well, let's not discount the fact the Suns, you call them the Jazz. I don't remember the Jazz the season prior being 2 wins away from an NBA championship. Like that's a different level than getting bounced in the first round or even the second round year after year after year. That's different story. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. But I mean, I'm watching that game. I'm like, ain't nobody can compete with these 2 teams. They play fast. They play great defense. They get good shots. They're both well coached. The rosters are well put together. It's like I always say, this ain't NBA 2K. What works? Not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs. Well, Phoenix showed it works in the playoffs last year. Okay, like I said, they were within 2 wins away of a Larry O'Brien trophy, and Golden State has showed us, 3 times in the last 6-7 years that, yes, it can be done. So that's where I'm at. Best 2 teams in the league without a question. Brian Kelly, we got another big college football coach story. Brian Kelly left the University of Notre Dame to go to LSU. He left Notre Dame to go to LSU. Now, before I talk about LSU, I know there's a lot of Notre Dame fans that feel probably the same way that Oklahoma fans feel about Lincoln Riley. What I would argue, I think Notre Dame fans are more justified. Not to say Oklahoma fans, and players for that matter, aren't justified in saying, man, wait, how'd that happen? But I think for Notre Dame, like Oklahoma, even if they had won Bedlam, they had no chance getting the playoff. Okay, Oklahoma State's a better team than them, and they showed that on Saturday night. And Oklahoma State's, hey, they're 5. They're number 5 in the country right now. They still very much are alive for possibly getting a college football playoff spot. I think if either Michigan State or Cincinnati loses, I think Alabama can lose and still get in. There's no way Alabama's not getting in the playoff the way that they've looked. But even with two losses. But to me, I think if you're Notre Dame fans or players, You're like, wait, hold up. We went 11-1. By the way, I saw this morning 5 straight double-digit winning seasons for Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. That's pretty extraordinary. But you're ranked 6th in the country. Now, you need a lot of help to get in the playoff, no question. Their chances are slim. But let's say Cincinnati loses to Houston. Houston's ranked 23rd in the country, and they're 10-1. That's not out of the question. Heck, Cincinnati barely beat, was it Tulsa or Tulane? I always get Tulsa and Tulane mixed up. I guess because it's 2 T names. But they barely lost to a team that was 3-6, or barely beat a team that was 3-6 at home. A loss is not out of the question in their conference championship game. Michigan, we've seen Michigan do some crazy things when the money's on the line. Now, it didn't happen on Saturday against Ohio State, and I do think Michigan will beat Iowa. But is it out of the question to say they might mess it up again? No, it's not out of the question. So Notre Dame still has a chance. Now, they probably need Oklahoma State also to lose in their in the Big 12 championship game to Baylor. But nevertheless, they're not done. They're not dead. And so Notre Dame players are probably like, hey, coach, you just dumped us like that, even though we're not finished. So I get the players and the fans' frustration. I understand it. I'm not going to bash Lincoln Riley. He went to USC. That's one of the premier jobs in college football. I'm not going to bash Brian Kelly. He just took one of the premier jobs at LSU. But I think, yeah, by the way, Brian Kelly signed a 10-year, $100 million contract, so he got paid big time. So good for him and good for LSU, because I said about LSU going into this season, they were ranked, if I'm not mistaken, they were ranked like 17th. I mean, they were in the top 25. I know that, but I think they're around 17 or so, and they had a game at UCLA. I'm like, LSU has a better roster than UCLA, and Chip Kelly's done a good job down there. But I trust Chip Kelly way more than I trust Ed Orgeron. Listen, Ed Orgeron, for the rest of time, is going to have the label attached to him, national championship winning head coach. And to me, where Ed Orgeron deserves credit in that national championship game, or not the game, but the season in 2019, is putting together a championship staff. In particular, Joe Brady, who was the best offensive assistant in college football in years. But it was the two Joes that led LSU to that championship. Joe Brady, who I think was the passing game coordinator at the time at LSU, and Joe Burrow, who won the Heisman Trophy, and who I said, and by the way, I was a doubter about Joe Burrow going into the draft. Obviously, I've been proven dead wrong. But I said about Joe Burrow, it's the greatest season any college quarterback has ever had. The man threw 60 touchdowns. 60. He had a game against Oklahoma where, if I'm not mistaken, he threw like 7 in the first half. Now, Oklahoma's defense is abysmal, but still, that's nothing to just, ho-hum over. That's outstanding. And so, Ed Orgeron never had a 10-win season without Joe Burrow. He had one in 2018 when they won, I think it was the Fiesta Bowl over UCF, and he had one, of course, the following season when they went 15-0 and won the national championship. Outside that, no double-digit winning seasons. At LSU, they're always going to pull in the recruiting. And so I think LSU made the right move and why they're set up for years of success. Is Brian Kelly at Notre Dame took some teams that were talented. I'm not going to sit here and say they're not talented. I've always called Notre Dame offensive line U. That school just produces great offensive linemen. It's what they do. I think everybody would agree with me in saying that the 2 best guards currently playing in the National Football League played at Notre Dame. Zach Martin of the Dallas Cowboys and Quentin Nelson of the Indianapolis Colts. Notre Dame, it's like Alabama. Alabama produces wide receivers. LSU produces great defensive backs. Ohio State does the same. Oklahoma produces great quarterbacks. There's just some Iowa produces great tight ends. There's just some schools that have a knack. Tennessee produces great punters. We're going the right direction, though. I believe in Josh Heupel. But the point is, certain schools have certain specialties, right? Certain areas where they excel in. For LSU, it's defensive backs. They put in some good defensive linemen in the NFL, some good receivers. I mean, heck, look at guys like Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. Look at what Justin Jefferson's doing in Minnesota. That LSU team was just loaded. Honey Badger, defensive back, right? Look what Honey Badger's done in the NFL since his career at LSU. So they're always going to have a top recruiting class. But what you got to have in that SEC West, when you got Nick Saban, who's the greatest college football coach of all time, we all agree on that, Jimbo Fisher, who's one of the best recruiters and coaches in America, okay, when you got Lane Kiffin, who for the moment, is still at Ole Miss and is as good of an offensive mind and recruiter as we have in college football, talent is going to be about equal. Alabama, LSU, you saw when they played a few weeks ago, there was not a massive talent discrepancy in that game. I mean, hey, LSU got a shot at a Hail Mary that would have won the game. That's how close they came on the road in Tuscaloosa. The talent level, it's about the same. But when it comes down to coaching, yeah, it ain't even close. That's what you need in the SEC West, which is without a question the best division in college football, the toughest division to win in college football. You know how good the SEC West is? Auburn finished 6-6 this season. They probably should have beaten Alabama on Saturday. That's how good that division is. Even the 500 teams can get you on any given day. You can't say that about a lot of divisions in this sport, even if it is in the SEC. Like the East, Vanderbilt is not beating Georgia, right? I think Georgia hung like 35 on them in the first quarter. So what you get is a Brian Kelly who's a great recruiter. You get a Brian Kelly who has been to a national championship game, who has been to a couple of college football playoffs, right? Or is it one or two? I think it's two. Yeah, it's two. So you have a guy who's been here before, who's played the big stage, and he finally gets an opportunity to say when he goes against these elite coaches, hey, talent-wise, we're equal. Nobody's arguing Brian Kelly's a better coach than Nick Saban, obviously. But it's a debate between he and Jimbo Fisher, or certainly I would take him over Lane Kiffin right now. So that's why LSU made this move. It's the right move. It's the best move I think they could have possibly made outside of Lincoln Riley. Like if you don't get if you tell LSU fans last week, you're not going to get Lincoln Riley, but you're going to get Brian Kelly, I think any LSU fan would have been elated about that. And they should. So within the next year, 2 years max, they'll be right back to possibly competing for Alabama for that division and for more national championship games. It's not a shot at Ed Orgeron. I think he's a decent head coach. But he's a champion because of the two Joes, Burrow and Brady. That's why he's got a ring. So great move by LSU. Great job by Brian Kelly's agent on securing that bag, securing that deal. Hey, listen, get your money, man, while you have the opportunity. But shout out to them. And so it's really interesting. By the way, before I get my next topic, got a little somewhat breaking news from Adam Schefter, who just retweeted something from Ed Werder. So Ed Werder of ESPN tweeted that while there was some consideration to let his right knee heal, the acting head coach today, Dan Quinn, of course, Mike McCarthy's out to COVID. We wish him the best. Thankfully, he's asymptomatic. But Dan Quinn tells Ed Werder that Zeke is expected to start and play his regular role against the Saints. Now, I'll talk about Zeke and the Cowboys a little later when I make my prediction, so I'll save that. But let me move to Russell Wilson for a second. So Seattle lost to Washington on Monday night. Lost to Washington football team. I picked Seattle. that was kind of, I said on Monday, I'm like, I think Washington clearly has a better team than Seattle, but I'm like, I'll bet on Russell Wilson one more time. One more time in the 2021 season, and it's fallen through. And I talked about this a few weeks ago, why Russell Wilson needs to leave Seattle, but Monday night was just another perfect illustration. Now, to be fair, Russell did not play particularly well. Matter of fact, for most stretch of that game, I'm thinking like, who's this imposter wearing number 3 in a Seahawks uniform? You look at Russell Wilson's numbers, and they are not going to blow you away. 247, couple touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over. And he had a pass rating of 110. That's good, but a QBR of 53. So right in the middle. But most of that efficiency, most of those yards, that touchdown, that came on that last drive, which to Russell's credit, he led the Seahawks down the field. They fail in the 2-point conversion. Then they recover the onside kick, but a penalty gets called for something that didn't even have to do with the recovery. It was a crazy scene. It was an illegal formation. It was a good call, but it was just bizarre because it didn't have anything to do with the recovery. So that was just a gut punch for the Seahawks, and could have given them one possible chance to get in field goal range and possibly win it with a kick to get their record of 4-7. Of course, that did not happen. The record is now 3-8, and it's a wrap. It's a wrap. I know Pete Carroll and some of the people in Seattle said, hey, we still got a shot. No, you're not. You are not going to the playoffs. The Seahawks are not going on a 6-game winning streak. If I told you, okay, there's a team going to go on a 6-game winning streak the rest of the season, and they're going to go in the playoffs with major momentum, who would you guess? You thought the Cardinals or the Packers or the Buccaneers with Tom Brady, obviously, and heck, the way New England's playing, it wouldn't surprise you if they pulled that off, or Kansas City even. You would not think Seattle. As it stands right now, I believe Seattle's in line to get a top 5 pick. Think about that. A top 5 pick. The Seahawks are a dumpster fire right now. Barry says, I agree with Russell leaving, but he can't behave that way on the field. His body language, his post-game comments, all of it just screams pouting to me. They need to part ways, both needed. And that was something I was going to address. I watched that game, like, man, Russ looks miserable. You know what it reminded me of, folks? You know what Russell, his body language, his facial expressions, like you mentioned, Barry, post-game, it reminded me a lot of LeBron James last year in Cleveland. Remember that playoff run when LeBron, it seemed like he dropped 40 like every single game. It was insane. But in those games, especially in the finals, he looks miserable. He looks like it is not fun playing basketball. Russell Wilson, it doesn't look like he's having fun playing football. It doesn't. At all. And so what I think is there's 3 reasons I think Russ needs to leave Seattle. But before I get to those, I talked about this offseason with Aaron Rodgers. I initially defended him. Like, yeah, he hasn't had much say in the organization. He's got a right to be angry with Brian Gutekunst, the general manager. But then I watched this season. I watched the Packers. I'm thinking, are we sure that this team is just totally devoid of talent, minus Devontae Adams, like Aaron Rodgers tries to lead us to believe? I'm not saying the Packers are going to be fine without Aaron Rodgers, okay? To me, when they lose Aaron, they're not a playoff team. You saw Jordan Love against Kansas City. It wasn't pretty. That's a great defense, to be fair. The Chiefs are, which is crazy to say after, the way they were playing a couple months ago, but that defense is really showing up. But for the Packers, you're looking at Rashawn Gary's having a big year, and you're looking at guys like Jair Alexander's the number 1 corner. But you look at Rasul Douglas, who's having an excellent year. Seemed like every game he gets an interception. You look at guys like Preston Smith, who's in the quarterback's face every single drop back on 3rd down. Offensively, Aaron Jones is hurt. No biggie. We got A.J. Dillon running over people. We got as good of an offensive line as there is in the league. Now, I still think the receiving core is fairly thin. I don't think it's great, outside of Devontae Adams. But that's really the only weakness of their team. Great offensive line, great running game, and a great defense. That's why I said the Packers on Monday are the best team in the league. They're clicking on all cylinders. They don't have the best roster necessarily, but what are we talking about? The Suns and the Warriors. Their pieces fit. Now, I don't trust Matt LaFleur or Aaron Rodgers as far as I can throw them in the playoffs, but right now they're the best team. So does Seattle. If Russell Wilson left the Seahawks after this year, let's just say hypothetically he did, how many games do we think the Seahawks win next year? Now, keep in mind, 6 games, a third of their schedule, basically, because we got 17 games now. So basically, a third of their schedule. You're going against the Rams, Sean McVay, and Matt Stafford. You're going against the 49ers, who have come back to life. They look like the 2019 version of themselves with, Kyle Shanahan's doing a great job. Jimmy Garoppolo's not going to be the starter next year. That's what all the reports are, all the press clippings out of San Francisco are. But Trey Lance, I think, is going to be the best quarterback that comes out of the 2021 draft. I've said that for a year. And you see how Jimmy G's playing. It's been excellent. Running game, excellent. Receivers, really good. Deebo Samuel, great defense. They're getting in people's face again. Nick Bosa and Fred Warner's a great linebacker. San Francisco is going to be good the next few years. And Arizona, all they've got is the best record in the NFL. Without Kyler Murray. They get him back, D-Hop, running game, offensive line, defense, which has terrorized every offense they played, it seems like. How many games Seattle going to win next year without Russell Wilson? Now, they'll have a last play schedule. That'll help. But what do you think? J Fusion 00025 says, you really in here talking to one person. That's dedication, my guy. As a man from Louisiana, kind of hard to watch you with the Cowboys gear on, though. JK, just keep it the grind, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you for the supportive comment. I appreciate that. I will definitely get to Saints and Dallas later in the show, so definitely stick around for that. I think it's going to be interesting to say the least. But I think there's 3 reasons Russell Wilson should and ultimately will leave Seattle. Number 1, he was unhappy after last season. When the Seahawks won the division, Russ, for 3/4 of the way through, was an MVP candidate. They went 12-4. Yes, they lost the playoff game to the Rams, but overall, one would say, all right, that was a good season by Seattle. We would call that a fairly successful season, given the talent on that roster. And he was unhappy after last season. And so you look at this year, they're 3-8. They have no chance of making the playoffs. How do you think Russell Wilson's going to feel now? How do you think he's going to feel? That's number 1. Number 2, you've got, and they're not going to fire him. The more I read, they're not going to fire him. Pete Carroll. I love Pete. I mean, he's as likable a coach as there is in the sport. Love Pete Carroll. What he did for USC and what was one of the greatest college football teams ever. Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, those loaded rosters they had there, and Pete Carroll doing an unbelievable job there. What he did at USC was not good. It wasn't great. It was special. But pre-Russell Wilson in Seattle, what did Pete Carroll do with the Seahawks? 2010, they went 7-9. Now, granted, they won their division and actually won a playoff game. The NFC West was horrible that year. 7-9. The following year, 7-9. They get Russell Wilson, 5 straight playoff appearances. Then they had the year where they missed the playoffs, but they go 9-7. They had a winning record, and then they make the playoffs the next 3 years. What I'm trying to say is this. I'm not saying Russell Wilson made Pete Carroll. Pete's a great coach. But dang, that offense looks stagnant. Shane Waldron, it's not working. Their new offensive coordinator, it's not working. We thought Shoddy was the problem. No. Shane Waldron, it's the same thing. Tyler Lockett's a talented player. DK Metcalf is an unbelievable athlete who's a horrible route runner. They have no tight ends. The running backs are beat up. Defensively, they can't stop a nosebleed. It's a poorly constructed roster. And number 3, it's not a free agent destination. See, free agents don't go up to Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, up near Canada. They don't go there. Like, well, Russell Wilson's great. So is Aaron Rodgers. Heck, the Packers are the best team in the league. No free agents are going to Green Bay. Why? It's cold. It's a small town. It's just not. Plus, you know you're going to be in the playoffs. You're not guaranteed to be. I'm not saying Super Bowls are guaranteed. Super Bowls are hard to win, but it's when you see what the Packers have done in the playoffs year in and year out. It's like almost. They're almost there, and they. Whether it's a botched onside kick or a bad coaching call or just getting pushed all over the field, like it's always been something for the Packers in the postseason. Barry says the only thing nice about the team is the uniform. Yeah, Seattle's got great uniform. I think their color rush uniforms are an eyesore. I think their color rush uniforms are awful, but their home and road uniforms are awesome. But it's not an attractive free agent destination. You go to a tough division. It's kind of cold, rains a lot. Seattle's a beautiful city, but it's not an attractive free agent destination. You know why they go to Tampa? Number 1, Tom Brady's there. He wins a lot. It's a warm city. You know, you go to December and it's going to be 70-something degrees. Why do free agents go to Los Angeles? Great weather, winning team. It's just the reality. So that's 3 reasons. Number 1, Russ was unhappy after last year. Number 2, Pete Carroll. I love the guy. And I don't like to talk bad about Pete Carroll because I love the guy. But his whole system looks archaic, old. Kind of the criticism that Mike McCarthy got toward the end of his time in Green Bay. It feels that same type of way with Pete Carroll in the Pacific Northwest. And number 3, Seattle's not an attractable free agent destination. So even if they do get a new head coach, even if they were to let go of Pete Carroll, which I don't think they will, free agents aren't going to Seattle. So it's kind of it's a bad situation for Russ. I'm not saying he's blameless. I'm not. He deserves blame. He didn't play well against Washington. Okay, that's a defense that has taken a big downturn from where they were last year. And keep in mind, Washington had the 2nd-ranked defense in all professional football last year. Okay, this year, they're kind of middle of the pack. And they're without Chase Young for the remainder of the season. And you put up 15. And 2 of those points were on a blocked extra point return for a 2-point conversion. It's not a great roster. The pieces don't fit. The coaching is... It seemed like Pete Carroll gets out-coached every game. Ron Rivera coached circles. The game plan was unbelievable for Washington. If they had a field goal kicker, it wouldn't even come down to a final drive. So, I've heard people suggest the New York Giants for Russell Wilson. I don't think that makes sense at all. People are like, well, his wife, Sierra, and she's a great entertainer. I'm like, I get that, but there's other big cities. Okay, it don't have to be the New York Football Giants, who had the worst record in the NFL since 2017. Literally. The New York Giants. An organization that's won 4 Super Bowls. Worst record in the league since 2017. Not the Browns, not some of these, the Lions, Jaguars, these other struggling franchises. Nope. New York Giants. So, there's destinations. I think Denver could work. I think Vegas is out of the picture. I like Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr works in Vegas. I don't know why the Raiders would want to get rid of him. Russ is better, yes. But unless you're certain that they're going to win a Super Bowl, as I have a comment here from iFusion0225. He says, we tried last year to get Russ to come to New Orleans. Yeah, that'd have been great. You see what Jameis was doing with the Saints earlier this season before he unfortunately tore his ACL. It looked like Jameis Winston's like, hey, he's turning his career around. You got the playmakers, Alvin Kamara, now Michael Thomas. That's been a whole story unto itself. He's done in New Orleans probably, but the Saints draft excellent. There's a good of a drafting team. The general manager does an unbelievable job. Right, Sean Payton's as great of an offensive coach as we have in the game. He's in the top 3 with McVay and Reed. He's as good as they come. Russ, hey, I'm not ruling it out because I like Jameis, and I think he might be in the midst of a sort of a resurrection of his career of sorts. But if they have a chance to get Russ, they're jumping at it because they got to go against Tom Brady for at least the next 2 years. I think Tom Brady's retiring at 47. I think he's going to go to 47. He's not going to 50. He is not going to 50 years old. I always say don't bet against Brady, but he is not going to 50 years old. 47 after year 25. I've said that for like a year. I think 47 years old, Tom Brady retires. So that's 3-4 years you got to go against Brady and that loaded Bucs team. Good luck. Good luck. You couldn't do it with Breeze last year. Now, I get Breeze was beat up, but that was a loaded roster for the Saints. They lost a lot of those guys, and they were 5-2 this season. Put Russ in that situation, I think it works beautifully, but it's over in Seattle. It is over. As Barry pointed out in the comments here, the body language doesn't look good. I don't think it's necessarily pouting. I think it's just straight up frustration. I mean, Russ has been the ultimate team player. Like some guys is like, oh, come on, man. Like, you got to be a better leader than that. I think for Russ, it's just like, man, I've been a good soldier for 10 years here. I've said go Hawks for a decade. And it's unbelievable the turn of events that can happen just on not one game, one play. One play. It's one of the biggest what ifs in sports history. If the Seahawks hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch on the 1-yard line against the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 49 in Glendale, Arizona. It changed the fortunes of two franchises. I don't have time to get into it, but the Patriots were like, okay, yeah, they're going to Super Bowls, but they're not winning. They're losing to Eli twice. They're about to lose to Russell Wilson, and all of a sudden, Malcolm Butler makes one of the great defensive plays, maybe the greatest defensive play in the history of the Super Bowl. Right? I mean, there was the end of that Titans-Rams Super Bowl a couple decades ago, obviously. You got that, but man, an interception at the 1-yard line to win the Super Bowl, that's as good as it gets. But it's Russell's been a good soldier there for a long time. It's run its course. It has run its course. iFusion0225 says, rather wait to get Rodgers when he bounces from the Packers. Probably won't happen, but wishful thinking. I mean, I don't, honestly, at this point, I don't know why Aaron would leave. I really don't. Like I mentioned earlier, he's got a way better roster than Russ. He's in a bad division, by the way. An argument could be made that along with the AFC South, the NFC North is a terrible division. Detroit's the laughingstock of the league. They have yet to win a game. Chicago, I love Justin Fields. I just don't know. Are they going to get the coach right? Because Matt Nagy's going to be gone after this season. They have a horrible offensive line, and their defense is somewhat in shambles. Khalil Mack's out for the year, right? And Minnesota, they're good enough to get to the playoffs, but nothing further than that. Nothing further than that. So I don't know why Rodgers would leave. Look, if New Orleans had a shot to get Rodgers, hey, pursue him. That's an attractable free agent destination. Absolutely. New Orleans is a great culture, great fan base, great coach. I mean, it's a great free agent destination for a guy like an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. We'll see. I think Russ, honestly, at this point, I think Russ is more likely to be on a different team than Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, Russ is more likely to be on a different team than Rodgers. And then what about Deshaun Watson? How's that legal situation going to play itself out next year? Is he going to be suspended? How long is he going to be suspended? There's a lot of questions with that, but next year in regards to quarterbacks, it's going to be very interesting. I think just as interesting as this past offseason with Stafford and guys like that. Carson Wentz got traded. So it'll be fun. A little bit of time to get into to Baker Mayfield. So the Browns general manager, Andrew Berry, who's a really good general manager. I mean, you look at the job that he has done since they got John Dorsey out of the building, who wasn't a good GM at all. They got Andrew Berry in there, and you look at the Browns drafting, you look at free agency, adding offensive linemen, adding great defensive backs. He's done a great job. But he was talking about Baker Mayfield recently. He said he expects. He said, "quote Baker's our quarterback. He's healthy enough to win games for us. If he's ready to go, he's going to be our starter. We all know Baker is incredibly physically tough. He's had stretches where he's played well." And he also said, quotes, he expects him to play his best football after the upcoming bye week. Now, yes, the upcoming bye week, which is this week currently for the Browns, It's huge for Baker because it gives him an opportunity to get healthy. He's got all the injuries. We all know about that, the shoulder and everything else. I think it wasn't a rotator cuff. It was something else, but he's beat up. We get that. But Baker now, if I'm getting this right, is 500 in his career. We're 4 years in. He's tough. We've learned that about Baker Mayfield. He's a tough son of a gun. Right? I don't think he's missed a game yet. If I'm not mistaken, no, he missed the one game due to injury earlier this year with Case Keenum. But for the most part, hey, he's hung in there, man. He's a football player. I respect him for it. Honestly, I do. You get hit constantly. I respect him for that. But with this roster that the Browns have, they should not be 6-6. They should not be fighting just to get in the playoffs. You're talking about all these great quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and company. Put them in Cleveland. Put either of those two guys in Cleveland, Ohio right now. Give them a Browns uniform and an orange helmet. And that team might be fighting for the number 1 seed. Lamar Jackson, folks. And I love Lamar. Lamar's one of my favorite players. He was abysmal. Terrible. He was hard to watch. What he did he didn't do anything for the Ravens much at all. He frankly didn't play well at all. It was one of the worst games Lamar Jackson's ever played in the National Football League, and the Ravens won. Some of that was great defense, but some of that is, and Baker just can't take you there. That game was on a silver platter. Okay, you talk about, well, Baker's got the injuries. Well, last year, you got Cleveland for a city whose sports has everything's always gone against Cleveland, right? The shot by Jordan and the drive and the Ernest Biner fumble and everything has gone against Cleveland, blowing a 3-1 lead 5 years ago to Chicago in the World Series. It's always gone against Cleveland sports, right? They got the break of breaks in the playoffs last season. They're just trying to hang on for dear life against the defending champ at the time, Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes goes down, and he's gone for the rest of the game. Baker, win it. You got the running game, offensive line, receivers, and defense. Win it. You're going against Chad Henne. Baker Mayfield should beat Chad Henne. And he couldn't do it. He's a starter. He's a franchise quarterback, or heck, I think that's even debatable at this point, but he can't take you there. He can't take you to the promised land. And so I get Andrew Berry, Browns fans, and the Browns organization. They're trying to be optimistic about Baker. It's time to move on. They signed the 5th-year option. Great. You can trade him, and a team will have him on the cheap for 2 years. But it ain't easy to put together a roster like Cleveland's put together, because they've got the second best, in my view, the second best defensive player in all of football, Myles Garrett, second to Aaron Donald. Myles Garrett is unblockable. There was a play Sunday night where 3 guys tried to stop him. It didn't matter. He got pressure on Lamar. He's that great of a pass rusher. He's as good as they come. You look at Denzel Ward. It seemed like every game Denzel Ward gets an interception. He had the pick six, 100-yard pick six against the Cincinnati Bengals a month ago. This offensive line, loaded. Got the best running back duo in football without a question in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, 2 Pro Bowl caliber running backs. Receivers such as Jarvis Landry, who's as great of a leader at the wide receiver position as there is in the sport. Donovan Peoples-Jones, got Njoku, Hooper. You've got weapons. You've got the coach. Kevin Stefanski, ladies and gentlemen, was the coach of the year last year. He's got everything. Heck, twice a year, he gets to go against a talented Steelers team, but one that as of right now is limited, really limited at the quarterback position with Ben Roethlisberger. I respect Baker playing through the injuries he's played with, but it's kind of like what I said about James Harden last year in the playoffs with the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of people said when Brooklyn lost to Milwaukee, obviously James suffered the hamstring injury in game 1. He didn't come back until game 5. He played the rest of the series. He was clearly limited, right? But he was bad. James Harden was bad the rest of that series. People are like, well, it's the hamstring. And I'm not an idiot. Yes, the hamstring contributed. But James Harden's always bad in the playoffs. Always. Year after year after year. Disappointment, disappointment, disappointment. Underachieving. When Baker's healthy, this is what he gives you. 200 yards. Vegas should do a line over under 200 yards for Baker Mayfield every game. Because you don't know. Most of the time, take the under. You could say, well, what about the weather? Aaron Rodgers has some crappy weather in Green Bay. So does Russell Wilson. So did Tom Brady for 2 decades in New England. Playing a bad Josh Allen has it in Buffalo. There's some bad weather in the NFL. It's called Mother Nature. It's called cold states. That's how it goes. It's the NFL. That's how it is. So I get Cleveland is trying to be optimistic. I get it. It doesn't work. You've got too good of a roster, too good of a coaching staff to just be fighting for a playoff spot. And as of today, I don't think they're in. I think if the season ended today, Cleveland's home. Cleveland's not even in the playoffs. That's unacceptable with the roster that they've done a great job in putting together. But it goes to show you, like I've talked about in this show for years, you can have the best roster in the league, but if you don't have that guy, look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Most of the guys from last year's Super Bowl team were on the team in the years prior when they were going 7-9 and at best 8-8 and 6-10 and just trying to get to 500. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Levante David and Devin White and all these great playmakers, and it didn't matter. And then they got Tom Brady in the building, and they're champions. I think the same case can be true with Cleveland. You get Russell Wilson, you get Aaron Rodgers, take off. You can go places. You can't go places with Baker Mayfield. It's kind of obvious at this point. I get they're trying to be optimistic, but we got to be real here. All right, Thursday night football. This could be fun. This is gonna be a fun one. So the Dallas Cowboys, my Dallas Cowboys. Of course, I'm wearing the hat. I'm wearing my Dak Prescott jersey. Let's see if I can show that. There you go. I got the number 4 right there. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I'm a Cowboys fan in large part because of Rain Dakota Prescott. I've been a Dak fan since before he was a Cowboy. So, if Dak left tomorrow to go to San Francisco or something, then I would be a San Francisco 49ers fan. That's not to say I don't, if you want to discredit my Cowboy fandom, go right ahead. Like, I don't necessarily blame you. But Cowboys Saints Thursday night football. I can't imagine the rating that this is going to get. Fox, NFL Network. As it stands right now, and this line has moved up and down, up and down. Dallas has been favored by as much as 7. So Vegas loves the Cowboys, and it's gone all the way down to 3.5. And you're thinking, wait, how does it go up and down like crazy? Well, as it stands right now, about an hour and a half-ish before kickoff in the Big Easy, the Cowboys are favored by -6.5 on the road. So the Saints have lost 4 straight. Taysom Hill's going to start. We've known that for a few days now. Trevor Simeon's been horrible. So they're going to start Taysom Hill, who's got a torn plantar fascia, which is a pretty tough injury to play through. Now, Taysom Hill is without a doubt the best gadget guy in the league. I mean, what Sean Payton did, taking this guy, he used to block punts, and then he started to be in these little packages, these Wildcat packages with the Saints back in the final years of the Drew Brees era. And then he's even caught a few passes. Like, he's a do-it-all football player. Like, he's really the definition. You hear these guys talk about these. You hear these guys coming out of high school. When you hear about college football recruiting, they're listed as athlete, like they're positionless. Well, this guy's an athlete, right? You can put him pretty much anywhere. He can play defense. He can play offense. He can play special teams. He can put him anywhere, and he could do some things at the quarterback position. But he is not going to beat you with his arm. He's not. I don't fear Taysom Hill as a thrower of the football. Now, maybe they won't have to, but maybe they will because Alvin Kamara's out again. And they're beat up in the offensive line. They're beat up defensively. As for the Cowboys, Of course, coming off 2 straight losses against Kansas City and a one that I don't know if I've quite recovered from yet, the Thanksgiving loss to the Vegas Raiders. They're actually getting reinforcements. Amari Cooper's back from COVID. CeeDee Lamb is back from a concussion. Lyle Collins is going to start at right tackle for not injured, but Terrence Steele, who's got COVID. DeMarcus Lawrence, for the first time in 3 months, is back, y'all. So that's another great pass rusher that the Saints got to account for with a beat-up offensive line. So I say all that to say this. To me, when people talk about, is this a make-or-break game? Is this a do-or-die game? Is this a must-win? It's not a must-win because the Cowboys have a game, 10 days from now against the Washington football team. It's not must-win. Playoff games are must-win. Elimination games in the regular season are must-win. This is not a make-or-break game. It is a take care of business or break game. Because I don't think if the Cowboys win this game, it catapults them back into the Super Bowl bubble and here we go. No. But if they lose, that's 3 straight losses. You drop to 7-5. Washington, if they beat the Raiders, is now, I think, a half game behind you. A game behind you, half game behind you. They're right on your tail after you leading them big the whole season. So for the Cowboys, it's you better win this game if you want to still be considered Super Bowl contenders. And so with that said, the Cowboys have not won a game at the Superdome since 2009. Ironically, they actually beat the undefeated at the time Saints. Saints were trying to go for an undefeated 2009 season. The Cowboys beat them. DeMarcus Ware had a game-ending sack, and the Cowboys won that one in the Superdome. I think today they repeat history. They don't break an undefeated streak, obviously, but I will take the Dallas Cowboys to cover the spread and win this game 34-20. There is no excuse why this team should absolutely dominate. Yes, Mike McCarthy is out. And again, we wish Mike McCarthy the very, very best. But hasn't he been the most ridiculed individual on the Cowboys? I mean, really, hasn't he been the guy we've criticized the most on this Cowboys team? Not Dak, not Zeke, not the defense. Mike McCarthy. You bring in Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's been a head coach before. Yes, it didn't work out in the end in Atlanta, but all he did was coach a Super Bowl 5 years ago. So he's experienced. And so roster to roster, it's not close. Healthy roster to injured roster, this game should be over by the third quarter. Troy Aikman and Joe Buck should be talking about, off-season golf in the fourth quarter, trying to find something to talk about because this game should be a wrap after the first 45 minutes of play. It's not a shot at the Saints, who still got a great organization, but they are beat up. They lost by 25 to a Buffalo Bills team. They got smacked 4 days prior by the Indianapolis Colts. And Buffalo came in there and just absolutely smacked them all over the field. I mean, this should not be even close. So if you're a Vegas guy or gal, bet the over. There's no excuse why the Cowboys should not absolutely just totally dominate this football game. So I've got the Cowboys winning, getting back on track at 8-4. I think it's going to be a domination. I do think, though, the Cowboys are making a very big mistake in playing Ezekiel Elliott. And here's why. Look, if you sit Zeke, you got a more than capable backup in Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard starts for at least 20 teams in the NFL. Tony Pollard's a really explosive player. You saw what he did in the kickoff last week against the Raiders. He can fly. He's shifty. He's pretty strong. He's underrated in his strength. He's a physical back. I mean, I've said it before that I think he's better than Zeke. But Zeke's beat up. He's not himself. Sit him tonight. Dan Quinn, it looks like they're going to play him. But to me, you sit him tonight, and then you play him the following game against the Washington football team. At that point, he'll have had 17 days off to get healthy, get ready for the stretch run, the rest of the regular season. You're going to need him if in order to make a possible run. And so I think you sit Zeke. I don't think they will, but I think they should. Regardless, though, Zeke, no Zeke, Cowboys win 34-20. That's my prediction. So with that is all the time we have for tonight's show. I appreciate everybody stopping by. Barry and iFusion0225 being in the comments, I believe, for the first time. I don't know if you've ever commented on the show. If you have, if you haven't, we greatly appreciate it. As well as everybody else, even those who didn't chime in the comments, we appreciate each and every one of you guys. Be sure to catch Carving It Up tomorrow, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate that as well. You are listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope everybody has a great evening. Hopefully, hopefully this is a good night for me as a Cowboy fan. iFusion0225 says Saints win games they shouldn't be winning. They have. I mean, they upset Tampa. It was a long time ago, but they did it without Jameis Winston. So it'll be an interesting game tonight, but I think Dallas should win and cover the spread, which currently is -6.5. So I hope everybody has a great evening. See y'all tomorrow night. Going to do my NFL Week 13 predictions. This is where it gets fun, folks. We're in December. This is the stretch run of the regular season. Let's go. And I'll make my predictions for Michigan, Iowa, and Alabama, Georgia. I think I'm going to shock you on one of them. So have a great evening. Stay safe, y'all. God bless y'all.